438. 438. Could you pray over the offering for us, please, this evening?
To you, most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to come and give back to our words of our words, Lord. And I pray that you be with everyone this night. I pray you be with us in Jesus' name.
All right, 569. We'll stand for this one, please. 569.
Stand up, Christ, the foe is not.
nothing like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, happy Australia Day. Okay. Patriotic lot, aren't you? All right, Gemma's on the prayer cards. She's handing them around. All right, any prayer requests this evening? Well, how about this? How about we start off with our country? We are supposed to pray for our leaders. We are commanded to pray for our leaders. There's nowhere in the scripture where we're commanded to like our leaders. We're just commanded to pray for them. So, and here's one of the very key things that we're supposed to pray for, that the gospel be not hindered. So pray for that. Pray that the gospel be not hindered by any legislation or policies that are brought into place. But we are supposed to pray for our leaders and all that are in governance. So pray for our nation. And
there's been a big push on the TV about the multicultural nature of our nation now, and you know, the government trying to make us think of everyone as one.
Yep.
Might be something that we could say about.
Yeah, it's that's a piece in a much bigger puzzle worldwide. Any prayer requests? The lady that shouldn't be here.
Shalom Sundays, both of them.
Shalom Sundays, yes. So both are Shalom Sundays. Not this week. Week and a half. Yes, pray for our Shalom Sundays.
Sorry,
Thank you.
he just reminded me. Could you just pray? I cannot travel at the moment, not with McGowan's still hard border. Just pray for that I'm able to get an open ticket on what I've booked already, that I can change it to later in the year. I would appreciate prayer for that.
Yeah. So pray for that. Over here. Jesse.
Just about kids going back to school and teachers and, you know, the capacity to mix germs. And I'm in a very multicultural school, so they're coming from everywhere. Whereas here, it's probably relatively local.
Yeah. It was local, yeah. Yeah. Kimmy.
Yeah, can we just pray for the Bible studies on the two sites? Yeah, they're doing really well, and it's really important to, I know Clayton, and I'm imagining Brendan too. Clayton's mate, Johan, has been going along, and he's definitely been growing with progress, I suppose. Clayton's sort of unsure about whether he's actually saved or not yet. Sort of leans towards that he is, so just pray for his salvation and that he'll continue going along, and yeah, it's exciting to see God working up there with different things.
Those mind size. Also pray for Julie's mum, when you mentioned Brendan. Julie's mum and her health at the moment. Any other prayer requests this evening? Ollie.
The missionaries and the Dentfords and the lost jobs.
All right, missionaries and Denfords and the lost jobs. Yeah, we can, for sure, buddy. Any other prayer requests this evening? That's it, quiet one.
Just continue to pray for the city ministry. And I got a call from A guy that I spoke to a very long time ago, probably like maybe 6 or 8 months ago. Met him on the street, spoke to him for probably 10, 15 minutes, and just questioning him and talking to him about the gospel. And then, he was it was coming across as, right, this guy doesn't understand the gospel. He doesn't really have any background. He understands a little bit about who Jesus is, but he doesn't really comprehend the gospel that Jesus had to die for our sins, and we've got to be born again and stuff like that. And anyway, I was just talking away to him, and then all of a sudden he was like, "Oh, I actually go to a Baptist church," and I was like, "Oh, really?" I was a bit sort of surprised because I was thinking, this is pretty basic, like what we're talking about here. And he said that he actually goes to Bellevue Baptist Church, which is down the hill.
Yeah.
And it was really random because he lives
Like Armadale,
yeah.
Kelmscott or something. Yeah.
How do you know this?
Because I remember you talking about that guy.
Oh, okay, yeah. So well, that was quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
And, but I got a phone call off him, and then he asked me. He was just like, "Oh, how's things?" or whatever, and then I remembered him.
Is he Indian or something?
No, he's actually. I think he's African, but I don't know whereabouts in Africa. Yeah. But and he's actually doing a nursing degree as well. And I was like, "Oh, Daniel's doing a nursing degree," and so on and so forth. Anyway, he was ringing me to see if I'd like to go along to some. It was like a conference or something, but he was saying that he got invited by somebody else and he didn't really have anyone to go with him. I'm kind of thinking, right, okay, I remember you, but I don't remember you that much. Like, and I don't know what the conference is about or whatever. And then he told me it was on the 14th of February, so I was a bit more concerned then afterwards, which is Valentine's Day. But I just had a bit of a laugh with him on the phone. He seems like he has been brought up in a Christian sort of background, but actually has never understood the gospel and never understood the simplicity of that you just believe on Jesus Christ and you're saved, that you're born again. And he seems like he's sort of just trying to do religious things. He's trying to be religious, and he thinks that's the way to that's the way to God, basically. And he was sort of even saying that in some of the things on the phone, and I'm kind of thinking, it'd be really good to meet up sometime and have a chat. So I'm going to try and catch up with him in the next week or so and just have a chat with him. Pray for that. His name is Candy. So, pray for him. Yeah.
No, that's...
Yeah, it's okay. I'm going to bring Naomi along with me as well.
But yeah, pray for that. That's it's interesting that he hadn't forgotten you.
Yeah.
And called you.
Yeah. Like 8 months ago. Yeah.
I do remember that. Like I said, I remember him. He had a friend or something. He and his friend was going along to Bellevue. Yeah. Yeah, and it was really funny because he goes, as soon as I was invited to this, the first thing I thought of you. I'm thinking, okay, right. Yeah, okay. What is the conference?
It was something. I don't know. It was something to do with
Yeah, I know. It's the Penrices with that. I'm not. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it could be any number of.
Some
things.
sort of Christian conference.
Yeah, so you need to catch up with him and.
So I'll just catch up with him for a coffee and
pray for Candy.
Chat. Yeah.
Jem.
Pray for anyone that's not saved and the baptisms.
Yeah, maybe Candy. Yes. Anybody else? Owen?
Today we went to the shops, but we're going to leave, and now we met a lady who was called Gloria, and I pray for her to go to this church.
Oh, okay. So you met a lady.
We got speaking to a lovely lady named Gloria, and she's a Christian, but not going to a church at the moment. Didn't seem interested in going to a church, didn't sort of seem like that was important. Not that she's not saved from not going, but I sort of tried to speak to her about how it's important to be at church, and obviously recommended here, and I gave her a track and things like that, and Owen had a little talk to her and things like that. So just pray that she might get back into church, and hopefully this church too would be nice.
Gloria, was her name Gloria, Owen?
Gloria Jean.
Gloria.
So very easy to remember.
Yeah.
Buy a coffee off her.
Yeah. Candy and Gloria Jean. We get the. There's a bit of things going on here,
Mate,
yeah. Jem,
The Rogers.
yeah. For their move or for them to stay? Sorry, I'm just clarifying what your prayer request is. Yes, we pray for the Rogers. And the Denfords are moving, talking about February 14th. I think that's their closing date on their house. So do pray for the Denfords as they get up to Collie. Was there a hand over here? Cal.
Yeah, just pray for Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got some issues with his doctrine, but he's still a brother, so I just pray for him. And, yeah.
Yeah. I think of the verse in Ephesians where it says, tossed about with every wind of doctrine. And right now he's tossed about with every wind of doctrine. That verse is there for a reason. And you know what? Nothing new. Paul dealt with it as well. What are you doing? That's what Paul was thinking. What are you doing? Just. Any other prayer requests this evening? No, that's fine. I saw you palming off, yeah.
I pray for my everyday dealings with the customer.
With your
Client.
dealings with your clients?
Yeah, I have no troubles with Christian brethren. It's just the unbelievers, So
Yeah.
they are good, but the important thing is our testimony also, and trust also that they will trust me. And
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I'm a Christian. That's the thing.
Very good. Any other prayer requests before we move on? All right, take your Bibles, turn to Proverbs chapter number 26. I think next week is February? Tuesday. So we'll be in Daniel next week, and we can overview of the book of Daniel. So have a read of it. If you haven't already, read the book of Daniel. There is 12 chapters in the book of Daniel, so make that an effort over the next 7 days to read Daniel. The first half is easy reading, good stories. Second half, you'll get it's like swimming in a pool. Drops off towards the deep end there, but we're going to start there on a Wednesday night. So this is the last one out of Proverbs for a little while, I would imagine. But Proverbs 26, verse number 1 says this: as snow in summer and as rain in harvest, so honour is not seemly for a fool. As the bird is by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. He that sendeth a message by the hand of a fool cutteth off the feet and drinketh damage. The legs of the lame are not equal, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. As he that bindeth a stone in a sling, so he that giveth honour to a fool. As a thorn goeth up into the hand of the drunkard, so is a parable in the mouth of fools. The great God that formed all things both rewardeth the fool and rewardeth transgressors. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. Seest thou a man wise in his own conceit? There is more hope of a fool than of him. The slothful man saith, there is a lion in the way, a lion is in the streets. As the door turneth upon the hinges, so doth the slothful upon his bed. The slothful hideth his hand in his bosom, it grieveth him to bring it to his mouth, bring it again to his mouth. The sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. He that passeth by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbour and saith, am not I in sport? Where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. As coals are to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. Burning lips and a wicked heart are like a potsherd covered with silver dross. He that hateth dissembleth with his lips, and layeth up deceit within him. And when he speaketh fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Whose hatred is covered by deceit, his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. A lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin. It's Proverbs 26. Lots of good ones in this one. Some of the chapters are like, I think we had it 2 weeks ago. There was a chapter that was like, man, there's some, what are you doing there? But these ones are a little bit more surface. Not quite, you don't have to dig quite as deep to get some of the meanings of these. They lay up on the surface. Any of these stand out? Any of these have been a blessing to you or a challenge to you in the past, or maybe just recently or just now? Any thoughts, comments, feedbacks, observations? Anybody? Anything? Whoever's on the mic? Not a single person. I'll give a bonus one here. Well, I'll start with number 1. How about that? This is not where I'm at. Verse 2, sorry. I'll start with 2. As the bird by wandering, and as the swallow by flying, so the curse, causeless, shall not come. I was like, what does that mean? I just didn't know what it meant. I looked it up. And Bridges was saying this basically about the causeless curse, where people shoot out their lip and they curse you, and maybe whatever they might say. And you think of the word curse, like we talk about swearing, they're swearing, they're using bad words or cursing. A curse is to say something derogatory towards someone and wish for something bad to happen to them. And he's saying, you know what, someone can say something bad to you and someone walk away thinking, oh no, you're gonna grow up and be an utter failure. No one's gonna listen to you. No one wants, someone just says negative words to you and curses you out for whatever reason, and someone walks away with those words and think, man, they said this about me, and maybe that's. And he's saying, you know what? There's no substance to what people say. People just say causeless things. There's no cause for what they say. And then he says about as a bird by wandering and a swallow by flying, like he's saying, how often don't you see birds flying over your head and they fly on by? And how many times do you stop and think, it's going to land on me? You just think it's just going to fly on by. And here's a swallow flying on by. Oh no, it's going to land on me. It's like he's saying, man, it's like birds flying over your head and people cursing you for out of reason. Sometimes people take it to heart and think, man, these things are going to come true. Someone said this to me. It's like a prophecy of description hanging over a person. And he's saying, man, it's just empty words. It's a causeless curse. Just move on. Any other observations? Connor?
Thinking about verse 3, and it says, a whip for the horse and a bridle for the ass and a rod for the fool's back. And I was thinking about that with a horse. When you're breaking in a horse, you run them in a circle. The only way to get them going is with a whip, and to control them with the whip, and you can change the direction by using the whip to get them going. And then with a bridle, it's the same with a horse, but the ass, it says here. And that's the only way you can direct them and move them around. And it's just like a foolish person. They just have to get in trouble to actually realise, okay, I got to get going here, Correction is needed,
Yeah. A word is not sufficient to say, do this. It's like their hearing is deaf. You're right. It has to end up with a rod. Or some sort of pain, some sort of like, oh man, I've messed up here. Yeah, it's true. Any other ones? Cole, what were you going to say?
There's actually a few of them in there.
There is a few, yeah.
That I can even remember reading at different times in my life, and God using them to sort of explain different situations that I was going through. The verse 8, it says, As he that bindeth a stone in a sling, so is he that giveth honour to a fool. I used to work for a company down in Midland. They were a tree lopping company, and we were doing work all around, just residential work every single day. It was pretty much the same stuff every day, but we'd go off a list, and there was one guy who was in charge, and he had been tree lopping for like 9 or 10 years and was absolutely excellent at what he was doing. He knew how to do every single job necessary, and he knew how to give instructions to each person to do it. And when this guy was in charge, everything went really smoothly. You know, all the jobs were done properly. They were all done in good time. Nothing was broken. The customers were happy. The boss was happy. Everybody was happy. And when the business got sold, it got sold to a guy who had very little experience in tree lopping and in that industry. And the first thing he did when he actually took over the business was he sacked the guy who was in charge of everything and who had been running things smoothly, and he put his son in charge of everybody. And his son had literally only figured out how to use a chainsaw pretty much. And when his son was in charge of everything, it literally just completely ran the business into the ground. And every single job was going disastrously. Like, stuff was breaking, clients were going crazy, and all sorts of terrible stuff was going on. I just think of that verse, like, as he that bindeth the stone in the sling, so is he that giveth honour to a fool. Like, he gave this honourable position to somebody who actually was a fool. Like, he didn't know how to do, he basically didn't know how to do the job at all, instead of this guy who did know how to do the job. And of course it was going to be a disaster. Of course it was going to cause problems. So that was interesting. But yeah, verse 16 as well. I know Connor always talks about this one. The sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. If you're lying in bed in the morning and it's really cold, and you know you have to get up for work, you're so wise. Like, you have all these different reasons that you can think of in your head. Oh no, you know what? It's actually really bad weather today. It's raining. It's cold. Or, this job can wait until tomorrow, or whatever it is. And you can think of all these reasons in your head, and they all seem wise, at the time. Basically, you can justify things to yourself, like when you want to be lazy. You can always have an excuse to be lazy. And then he goes on as well, where the sluggard says, there's a lion in the streets. Like, there's a lion. I can't go out and work because I'm going to get eaten by a lion, which of course is ridiculous. But they're the lengths that, you can go to convince yourself, if you just want to be lazy, you don't want to do anything.
Yeah. 20, I just looked at it before when you're thinking of it. Chapter 20, verse 4. The sluggard will not plough by reason of the cold, therefore shall he beg and harvest and have nothing. There is a proverb exactly about how the cold deters someone. That lion, those 4 verses, I think, go all together. Where he says in verse 13, the slothful man, the slothful one saying, there is a lion in the way, a lion is in the streets. It starts with excuses, these 4 verses. It's like it's wedged between excuses, that the lazy person has excuses. There is a lion in the way, a lion is in the streets. And then the next one, verse 14 and 15, both have to do with sleeping and just being utterly lazy. As a door turneth upon its hinges, so that the slothful man upon his bed just kind of rolls over in bed, as that idea, like a door back and forth. That's all he's doing in bed. And then 15, the slothful man hideth his hand in the bosom. It grieveth him even to bring it again to his mouth. And I think what it means by this, and I remember Pastor Harris mentioning this, about being too lazy to feed yourself. That someone is so lazy, they're too lazy to feed themselves. It's like they've got a bowl in their hand, and it's just like too much to put the food in their mouth, and they're just like falling asleep. And they're just too lazy to even do it. Or they're sitting on the couch thinking, just don't even want to get up and do food. Like, they just don't want to eat. They just want to sit on the couch and do nothing. And then after that, you have that one that Cottle just mentioned as well, that the sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render a reason. Conceit has to do with conception, conceiving. So here is a person conceiving in their mind about, they come up with the scenarios, and no matter how much someone else comes along and says, no, that's not really the case, like you could do more than what you're doing, or you can do, that's not really a reason. But he's wiser in his own conceit than in what he's conceived, in the excuse that is conceived in his mind. And then 7 men that can render a reason why that excuse doesn't really hold water. And verse 13, going back to that one where it says there's a lion in the way. There were lions in Israel. I don't think there's lions there now, but David killed a lion and a bear. So obviously in a migration of animals, there were crocodiles in the Nile, and apparently there's no crocodiles in Egypt anymore, or hippos as well. They're all further south. So animals have migrated over time. into different ways, in different areas. But there's no lions there in Israel in these days that I know of. So is it plausible that they could have seen a lion? Yes. Is it probable? No. But this is where people get with excuses, that they start believing what is plausible, and then they get it in their head that this is absolutely what's going to be, and this is how the lazy, they do more work between their ears than they do actually with their hands and their feet. They're sitting there sitting about all these reasons why, like I said, why shouldn't get out of bed, why it's a bad reason, why I can't do it, why today's not the day, and why it's just too much, or why it's this, or why it's that. 1,000 excuses, and really what takes place between all the excuses is actually just dozy, sleepy nothingness. And in all those excuses, the thing about the sluggard actually believes himself. He actually believes, man, if I go out today, absolutely, I saw the lion danger, and it's extreme. Whatever, if there's a lion, but that's how they think in their mind. And it doesn't matter if someone comes along and says, mate, there's not been a lion in these parts for donkey's years. You haven't seen one around forever. And even if you do see one, man, they're more afraid of you than they are of you. They keep to themselves, and you can give them all the reasons why it's fine. You can go out and look after sheep. You can go do your work. You can give all the wisest men can come along and tell you why. And this person says, no. He's wiser in his own conception and his own excuses. Then it doesn't matter how many people can say to them, right, no, this is not the way it ought to be. Excuses overpower the sluggard and the slothful. It's an interesting one that he makes mention of that. Real quick, with the time we have left, go to verse 22. Verse 22. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. I have in my notes here words that rankle. I don't know if rankle is a word that you use. Not ankle, not cankle, rankle. Rankle. I don't know if that's in your vocabulary or not. But words that rankle. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. The old saying, as a kid we used to recite it, and maybe your parents taught you to recite it, where someone might have said something nasty to you, and it's sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And being told that as a kid, and maybe reciting that back to someone who calls you a name, and hands on hips, and you're all the little sass of a 10-year-old, and saying sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And we say it like as if it's true, but it's not actually true. Names do hurt, and names do hurt, and words do hurt, and in fact we could say it this way: words rankle. Let me tell you what rankle means. Rankle means this: to grow more rank or strong. It means those hurtful words that are said may be hurtful. Sometimes they're not even meant to hurt, they're just passing comments said, and words that can go down into the innermost parts of a person, and over time they grow more rank and they become actually stronger in a person's life. Those words that may have been said a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago or sometime in the past, they go down and they cause a wound. The words of a talebearer that goes around and may spread some gossip or spread a story or say something, that talebearer in its slander or whatever it might be that's been that tale that has been told, it goes down into a person's heart, into their heart, and it becomes inflamed. This word rankle means this. That wound means to become inflamed. It's like if you get something underneath your skin, or in fact in World War II, during the tropics, when the armies were up in Thailand and through Malaysia, they dealt with a lot of festering wounds. So they'd get scratches, and because of the humidity and because of the conditions in which those soldiers were living in, they'd become ulcers, and they just become festering wounds that even just a little scratch and got the disease and the bacteria that gets in it. There was some great oozing wounds that they would carry as they were going around, almost to the point in some cases where limbs were lost as a result of tiny scratches and tiny injuries. Well, words are like that. Sometimes they can go in and they're just little words. It's like a scratch, and we might pass it off in the moment, but the more we think about it and meditate upon it and then think, what did they actually really mean by that? And who, someone else must have told them this, and that means someone else must be thinking, and all of a sudden you're concocting this narrative around around these little words that have been said to someone, and they may have deliberately said it or maybe indirectly and not deliberately said it, but your mind goes to work, and it's now you're thinking about it and you're rehashing it, and now you're playing it over, and you go to bed at night and now you're thinking about it more when the lights go out, and you wake up the next day and something else triggers your memory, and now you're thinking about it, and now it's become such a part of your psyche, such a part of who you are, that a month later you're still remembered what's been said, and 6 months later and a year later, and there's more thoughts have been put to it, and that little word or that comment or that story that someone that told about you has grown in quite the wound inside of you. And the grows more strong. The word rankle means to fester. Like I said, like those tropical ulcers that those military men would get, and it becomes more violent. And that's what he says here. The words of a talebearer are as wounds. The words that we have, if we're not careful with the words we speak, we can carelessly cast wounds into people that we don't really think any more of it, but the person who received those words thinks more of it, and they become more and more. And so we must be careful. And I'd say this, slander is, the talebearer has to do with slander. Think about this. Joseph received slander from Potiphar's wife. He outright lied about Potiphar. He was told that he was trying to get Potiphar's wife. That's what Potiphar's wife said. And that was not what Joseph did. Moses had the mixed multitude. They said, you only come out here to kill us in the wilderness. You're only here, you don't care about us. You're just here for your own glory and for your own fame and you did this for your own selfish reasons. That's what they said against Moses. Do you think those words could have cut deep to Moses? I think they could have. Do you think those being thrown into prison on a false accusation could have cut deep to Joseph? I would say yes. And if you're sitting in the jail and there's no one else around you, guess what you're festering and thinking on if you're not careful? How did I get here? It's Potiphar's wife and what she said, and all of a sudden the whole circumstances play over and over in your mind. Jeremiah was falsely accused by Hananiah, and about Jesus and the scribes and the Pharisees, the hurtful words and the accusations that were leveled against Jesus. You're just a maniac. You're a maniac who has a devil from Samaria. Aren't you a Samaritan with a devil? I mean, they're the things that were cast at Jesus. And all of these different things that were cast deliberately to hurt. In those cases, they take up a wound and they take up a hurt. And to the talebearer, we'd say this: there is no place for talebearing and slander in the life of a Christian. We ought to minister, the words that come out of our mouth ought to minister grace to the hearers. That's what Paul says, that there ought to be love and kindness that comes from our words. And we're supposed to be very careful, because the tongue is an unruly evil and must be kept in check with all diligence and discipline. And we ought to guard our hearts, to guard our tongues from words that rankle. In David, when Saul was leveling his accusations against David, this is what he wrote in Psalm 19, verse 14. He says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer." When you go through the hurtful situations, don't just guard your mouth, because that's what we say, I'm going to guard my mouth. All the while your mind is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, meditating upon the hurt that someone else has said to you. David says this: God, would you guard my mouth, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. God, I don't even want to think and meditate upon the hurt that someone else is doing to me currently, or what they may have done to me in the past. I want the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart to be acceptable in your sight. And if you can get the meditation of your heart right, you'll find that the words coming out of your mouth are a lot easier to control when you ask God to check your heart and the meditation of your heart. So to the talebearer, watch the words that come out of your mouth. And secondly, this, to the victim. If you've been the victim of talebearing, whether by at school or online or at home or at church, at work, let me make a warning to you. Don't leave it unchecked. Don't just let it and say, I'll just leave it alone. because if you're not careful, you'll find that you'll go back to it. And if you don't deal with it, you'll go back to it again and again. And here you are now, maybe as a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old, and you find at this age in life, and you're still thinking about things from what happened in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, or you're in your 30s now and you're still thinking about things that happened in your late teens and early 20s and things like this. This is not, I'm not exaggerating, this is how people live their life, with wounds that have been left unchecked. And they are still festering in people's lives. And he says, there are words of the talebearer are as wounds. They rankle if they're left unchecked. Those ulcers in the tropics had to be dealt with, and they had to be cleaned, and they had to be dealt with. And if it started to ooze again, there needs to be more attention given to it. And you know when those old wounds start to fester, there's attention that needs to be given to it. You need to be on your knees before God. God, I need help with this. This old wound is starting to fester a little bit more, and I thought it was healing over, and now it's coming back. Check it. Get on your knees before God and ask for help. And take it to the cross and ask for God's grace to be a balm in your life, that those hurts and those festering wounds from words that may have been said to you, let the grace of God be poured in as oil to the wound and to the hurt, to cleanse it and to heal it. And God has a wonderful way of healing the hurts caused by others. Don't let the words fester and just think, it's fine, I'm over it. You know when it starts to fester. And if you're not careful, those wounds of a talebearer will rankle. Words that rankle. Be careful of your words. Be careful of your words.